A couple of weeks ago, you guys said that CPC had most of the molds done and we're already stamping out parts, but the tub and a few other parts weren't quite done yet. Do you know like where are we at with CPC and the body parts? Are still a couple of parts still needing to be done, or are we stamping out the parts now?
Yeah, I mean, Steve and I were in Italy. I guess it was 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago.
Mhm.
But they had every tool done except for the roll hoop and the tub.
Okay.
And since then they've finished the roll hoop and they've been mightily working on the tub. The
Okay.
problem is the tub is so big that CPC didn't actually have the machine to mill the tool themselves.
Uh-huh.
Had to go to another part of Italy to somebody who has a massive CNC machine.
Uh-huh.
And they actually started the tub almost at the beginning of the tooling program, but it's now the last tool to get finished just
Oh,
because
okay.
it's such a monster
It
of a tool.
takes that long to make one of those, huh?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most time consuming of the process is actually getting the heating in the tool. So milling the surface is one thing. You got to mill it 4 times. You got to rough mill it, and then a little
Uh-huh.
finer milling, and then you get the nice smooth shape like the pictures you've seen of the CPC tools.
Hmm.
But then you have to kind of cross bore into the tool, and you've got to run these heating circuits all through the tool. And
Oh, okay.
the heat comes in the tool and heats
Hmm.
it up to the right temperature, and that's what makes the carbon fiber SMC goo flow through the tool. You know,
Oh, okay.
you imagine it's like a waffle iron. You have a waffle iron, and you put a candy bar of SMC thermoset resin and carbon fiber. That's what
Hmm.
it is. And it's just a candy bar that sets in there, and then you close the tool, and then because of the heat, it's able to smash that material out through the
I
part,
see.
and
Huh,
it's
huh.
strategic on where you place the material to start. So that's some of the fine tuning that they were doing when we were there at CPC.
I
And
see.
once they fine tuned that, obviously they have simulations that tell us where it's supposed to go, but
Hmm.
you never know to actually build the tool and make the part. So once they run through, where to place material and how it flows out, and once they get it perfect, then they send it back to the coordinate measurement machine, and they make sure that the part thickness is all right. Because you can measure the tool and other stuff, but then when you put it under pressure and you heat it up, some weird things happen sometimes. So those pictures that we had of the carbon fiber and glass fiber SMC parts that we had that had the green sticker on it, those have already been through the whole process. The tool was validated, it's pressed parts, then the part was validated. Those are then production parts once they have green stickers on them. So the tub tool has not gone through that process yet. So,
Okay.
hopefully the next few weeks, they will get that tub tool. Last I heard, they were putting the heating stuff on it.
Hmm.
So hopefully that's done in the next few weeks, and then they'll make those parts. And it does take, sometimes a couple weeks. And because the tub is the largest part that they've ever made,
Okay.
could take some time
Hmm.
to get it just right. But here we sit in October. We're hoping that in November we're seeing the first tubs,
Okay.
and once they have the tub, then it's just putting those body structures together. And
Okay.
CPC is very good at that. They do it for name some of the biggest, coolest supercars that I used to salivate over when I was a
All
when I
right.
was a kid, and they've done it to those tolerances for $1 million vehicles that look as cool and perform as cool as you would expect
Hmm. Hmm.
from
So yeah,
molding.
so the tub is left basically.
But the tub and the roll hoop, yeah.
The world. Okay. And
I haven't,
so
I haven't seen a
they
green
are gonna
tub.
put it together and then ship the completed bodies to Carlsbad.
Right now, we're still working with some European suppliers on the frame and the suspension parts too.
Okay.
So it's likely that CPC will ship us the body with the closures, with the seals, with the
Okay.
glazing, which is the glass, windshield
Uh-huh.
glass, side glass,
Uh-huh.
along with the frame and the suspension parts.
Okay.
So it
And
may,
the motors too, because Elaphe is in Europe as well.
yeah, it may. I still think we'll end up doing the motors here.
Okay.
But it may not be a rolling chassis because
Uh,
shipping such a wide thing is a pain in the ass.
Oh, right. Hmm.
So it may be that it's like a completed vehicle with the suspension drooping and the shocks and springs not on, and then
Hmm.
we're able to stack them 4 high, in a
Right.
container. You could I think we did some measurements. You can fit like 8 of them in a 20-foot container, 16 of them in a
Is
4.
that kind of the long-term plan is to ship like mostly completed bodies to the various final assembly sites?
I think the long-term plan is to capitalize, to produce a lot of those parts in the U.S.
Okay.
Bring jobs here. There's a lot of incentives to bring clean tech jobs to the States. So, I think long-term it's to bring more of that here, and then CPC could build vehicles for Europe and maybe Asia over there, but capitalize to have that production closer to home.
Okay.
One of the biggest costs for these parts is actually the energy it takes to heat those molds, keep them heated, and press those parts. California is not the place where you want to pay 17 cents a kilowatt hour for industrial power
I see.
to produce those parts. You want to go somewhere that has 4 or 5 cents a kilowatt hour to produce those parts. And Europe is not in a good position now to buy power. Crane thing has made things pretty rough. The big steel blocks that we had were actually made in Germany, and I think we bought them just in time because it was, we purchased them before the Ukraine thing, and then energy rates shot through the roof, but we'd already paid for them. So luckily we didn't get a doubling of the cost of those parts. We got them in time, and CPC was able to mill them down and get them going. But Europe is having trouble with energy cost. And it's an interesting landscape for energy right now, for sure. And to press these parts, you need a lot of energy. So
I didn't realize that you needed to heat those, but that makes sense. So talking about Elaphe, how are they doing? Because as far as we know, their customers that we knew about were you guys, Lordstown, and Lightyear. And Lordstown and Lightyear are defunct. So are they okay? Like, are they going to be able to supply the motors?
Yeah, one thing, Slovenia is beautiful. So they live in a beautiful part of the world. If you ever get a vacation to Europe and you can make it to Slovenia, go to Elaphe's part of the world. It's a miraculous place. But they had some public clients, but they have way more private clients.
Okay, so they are financially gonna survive long enough to provide you guys motors.
Yeah, and they have bigger motors and smaller motors too. It's not just the motor that we co-developed with them, which is a pretty cool thing, and it's super efficient and does everything it needs to do. But they have big motors for trucks and kind of commercial transportation, and then they have smaller motors too. And I think probably what will be more kind of profitable and a successful program for them long term is kind of their commercial work. So they're doing some cool things, and Garage is killing it over there in Slovenia, and we can't wait to be shipping a bunch of those motors to the US and Europe and other parts to be put in Apteras.
So what is still left to be done for the Aptera? Like, what are like the body's done, the suspension's done, the motor is done, the battery pack, I guess, is done as well. Like what's left to do?
Good question. What is left?
Obviously the app is still, you guys are working on the app and the UI, because that's kind of the thing you can work on the last, right?
All the firmware and software is kind of this ongoing thing that we really have to put a lot of pressure on, because that can evolve for the next 6 months before things you really have to be firmed up for production. But the app, I just sat in an app meeting to go through some of the app stuff, and it looks really cool. It's really it really meshes well with the UI UX. I think we've gotten a lot of industry talent that have seen a lot of other really popular electric vehicles out there, and the good and the bad contribute to our UI UX and our app. So I think it's great to have that kind of talent. On the engineering front, Jason was over in Italy working on the sun visor. And I think we had a couple more things to do on like the clips for the rear storage and the cover for the bunk rear storage.
Yeah.
It's a frunk in the front and it's a bunk in the back.
Yeah. I think you guys are calling it the bunk. That little thing in the floor that you lift up, right? At least that's what Jason calls it. He calls it the bunk.
Yeah. If you ask Jason, he would say, the interior is, 98, 99% done. Obviously there's some supply chain feedback to where they're like, oh, we're going to make it out of this material, so it needs to be 1.2 millimeters thick instead of, 1.1 millimeters thick or whatever. So there's some of that going on for some of the parts and some of the other parts of the vehicle too. but mostly, mostly non-structural parts. All the
Okay.
structural stuff
But
has been.
like HVAC, is that done?
Yeah, HVAC is done. Vents are done.
Solar
All the
done?
solar's been done. Solar is kind of the first to be done.
Okay.
Really the last thing that I kind of was like, oh, I'm surprised that's not done yet is sizing the pumps for our cooling system.
Okay.
So we've designed the cooling system. Roush helped us simulate it and go through all that stuff, component selection. But surprisingly, the actual pumps and the suppliers for the pump have been a bit elusive.
Okay.
So we've been talking with a lot of people. We've tested a lot of pumps,
Mhm.
but it's actually signing a supply agreement on a specific pump that does specifically what we want to do. And
Mhm.
we try to limit the number of pumps. We don't want like 8 pumps. We don't want an
Right.
octave valve, like Tesla has. We tried to keep our cooling system very simple,
Mhm.
but there's 2 pumps that when I last talked to Kiva, he's still working on trying to put a pin in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the last things that I remember. All the bushings, all the suspension, the dampening, some of that stuff still has to be tuned, but it's
Uh-huh.
already designed in. So the parts designed in, the supplier has been selected and awarded,
Mhm.
but then you got to go through testing with a supplier, and they're like, oh, the durometer on the rubber for that part needs to be stiffer or lighter, and you don't
Mhm.
find that out until you really put it through its paces and give it to them to test for a while. So
How much of the things that you think you're putting in the Aptera is like stuff that's made for Aptera versus like off the shelf stuff? Like the coolant pumps, I imagine you guys are getting like kind of off the shelf stuff and just picking the one that works for you. And I'm guessing the HVAC stuff is similar. Obviously, like the motor is specially designed for Aptera, and of course the body is Aptera. But
it's a question. I know we went through the analysis of that,
Mhm.
maybe a year ago. But it seemed like kind of 30% was the stuff that, could cross over to other vehicles.
Okay.
Obviously the battery cells are a big ticket item, and those battery cells can be used for a lot of different vehicles. We make them into a bespoke module and then a bespoke pack. But
Mhm.
if you were looking at the vehicle holistically, it's latches, it's seals, it's the HVAC stuff, it's DC to DC, it's the cells in the battery pack. But most of the visual stuff that you see is all bespoke,
Okay.
bespoke body,
Right.
bespoke
Right.
seats, bespoke interior parts. It's some of the stuff underneath
Mhm.
that we kind of can recycle from from other automotive players,
Yeah.
and Cherry Automotive, which invested in us and has been a great long-term partner. So
Yeah.